Hello there, I'm Sorvesteon, and I'm going to be showing you how to run the new dungeon, Hadakhan's Underground, or as we like to call it, just HU. Now, first things first, the dungeon is only runnable once a day, and if you fail in it, well, too bad, no do-overs. It's on a 12-hour cooldown, and that's not affected by reset. Now, if it's your first time, you'll want to go talk to Master Yulnis in the Royal Audience Chamber in the main castle. He'll send you to talk to this guy, San Garlin, Capital Guard, who will have 3 more daily quests that you can complete in the dungeon itself. So once you've picked up the quest, you can head into the Baelas Library to where the dungeon entrance is. A few things you should know before you attempt this dungeon. First of all, it is puggable, and by that I mean you could just party with random people. It doesn't require a whole lot of coordination. This is the entrance, and that's what I do all the time. It's not necessarily to run a dedicated group with your guild. If you want to, that's fine too. Now let's talk gear requirements and level requirements. The minimum level for this dungeon is 60, although I wouldn't recommend you run it on 60 unless you're basically being carried. 67 is the ideal level, and the ideal gear set for this would be a full plus 25 to Majin armor, weapon, mounted weapon, and plus 5 jewelry set. However, I know that, well, it's not always possible to have the most ideal gear. So what I have found is that this dungeon is completely runnable in mostly Alsatian gear. And I'll show you what I've got on me here. So I've got a plus 17 Tamajin sword. I think if you're a DPS class, as long as you have like a Tamajin weapon and it's plussed up to a decent level, like you have a tempering level of say 20 or 25 would be ideal. But you only have Alsatian armor and maybe Alsatian jewelry, and perhaps even Alsatian mounted weapons, that would still be fine. The biggest thing about this dungeon is having the DPS to clear the waves so that the enemy mobs don't build up and get by you. You also want a certain amount of defense to be able to survive being hit by them. So if you are running in Alsatian gear, I don't recommend just going in like non-tempered Alsatian gear. I recommend going in like plus 17 Alsatian armor. If you have Alsatian jewelry, try and temper that up to like plus 3 or plus 5 ideally. And again, also temper your mounted weapons and socket them with familiar seal stones. All of your gear should be socketed with familiar seal stones. Ideally legendary and high level legendary, ideally. At the minimum, heroic. And so that's what I think is sufficient to run this dungeon. Okay, so I'm in the starting area for HU. I have to enter this gate to actually enter the combat area. There's a water crystal up in front of me. We're going to use it to activate the event to start the dungeon. You can see that there are 3 different passageways. And as my fellow team members come in, we're all going to split off, usually in pairs. I'm just going to put my pet here out of the way so I can get the buffs, but it doesn't aggro anything. Anyways, as I was saying, we're all going to split off into pairs to defend this crystal from the endless waves of mobs that are going to pour into this dungeon from each of these 3 passageways. Now, I think in this case, we're not going to use a normal setup since Lokai there can probably handle this passageway by himself. I'm going to team up with Arcanist X here. Tank should always pair up with a high DPS. It'll be my job to kind of hold them here. Well, my teammate just nukes them all down. Alright, looks like we're ready to go. We have 3 on that passive side. Lokai's gonna take care of that one, and I'm gonna take care of this one. And time to start the dungeon. And now mobs start pouring in. And my job as a tank is to make sure that none of them get past me. We don't want anything making it to that crystal. So I'm gonna try my very best here to make sure that all the mobs aggro on to me, at least in my passageway, and that none of them make it to the water crystal and start hitting on it. The first few waves are pretty easy. It's mostly just about DPS per se. It gets a little harder in the next series of waves, as the monsters also tend to do more things like knockbacks and explosions and stuff like that, which hopefully we'll see. As a tank, I try and keep my AoE pull up for every time a new wave comes. And since we've cleared that one, we get a little break now. We got this greedy man. Usually or sometimes you'll get a quest which you can complete inside the dungeon. From now on though, to activate the next set of waves, I'm gonna have to use this lever up here. Okay, Dumbledee's gonna start it. Which actually makes things easier for me. Then I don't need to run back and forth. And I can just focus on DPSing and holding the waves. Fortunately, the magician that I'm paired up with has a lot of DPS, so that's going to make my life a lot easier. There have been times when I've run this where I've been paired up with a DPS who's not quite so geared, and so I'll have to do quite a bit of tanking. But as long as you have fairly decent gear, and I'm talking like a Temujin weapon, and or Temujin gear, I wouldn't really consider Temujin armor to be an absolute necessity for this dungeon. But as long as you have a good or strong amount of DPS with a good pet, this dungeon is not too difficult. So these zombies that will pour in, along with these trees, they explode, and it's not blockable. So you have to kill them either before they explode, which we're not doing, or just be prepared to eat some damage. Although I have to admit, to kill them before they explode takes a good amount of DPS. Now, it should be said that the waves are not always the same. Like, you're not going to see the same monsters in the same order. The trees tend to spawn a little bit later, so do these exploding mummies. But the dungeon tends to change from day to day, and sometimes, well, you'll see, you know, a different variety or a different combination of mobs pouring into the dungeon. Just know that each wave gets progressively more difficult. There's Rote. He's an elite, but he drops some pretty good stuff. Like Hakanis Tamirian mark boxes and other good things. And it looks like they were having a little bit of trouble over on that side. So, stronger sides can help out weaker sides as long as the weaker sides can hold out and keep the mobs away from the crystal. Let's see here, have I gotten anything interesting so far? Oh, just a whole bunch of tempering stones and a mark box. And a few transcending stones. Still early in the dungeon though. Still have a few more mobs to clear, or waves to clear I should say. And it looks like we're going to be doing this short-handed as our priest has disconnected and doesn't seem like he's coming back. What I see often DPSs do is they will put their pet here, either a Tishanan or a Saluna, as you can see there. And that's helpful because the mobs will sometimes aggro onto that pet beforehand. It also helps for just looting in general. You don't want loot boxes piling up in front of you. It makes things hard to see. You can see that it's not too well lit in here. Ooh, another Rote, exploding mummy, and a possessed girl. Ooh. Nice. Get myself back in a position here. The exploding mummies and the possessed girls can be very dangerous because the possessed girls will call for reinforcements and the mummies will explode on top of you. Not a very nice combination. And you can see it's pretty regular. If you don't have strong DPS, they will pile up on you. Oh, there's an Orega. He's also one of the mini-bosses in here who drops nice loot. So, it's a pleasure to see him. Although he doesn't seem to want to aggro onto me. So I don't feel like I'm doing my job as a tank very well. While we wait for more monsters to pull in. Oh, now this is where things get nice and interesting. These animated bombs, in combination with these guys, the stone headbutts, and the trees, which are hard to take down, is not a very nice combination. Since they also all tend to have quite a bit of health, except for the animated bombs, they also will build up faster, and it's easy to get overwhelmed in these final few waves. These cursed grave robbers will also, unless I grab them, run straight past us to the crystal. Unless they happen to aggro onto you or you get a hit in or something. Well, Now that siren means that we've finally cleared all the waves and we are to the final boss. So we just get rid of those guys. They're still dealing with waves over there. We have an Orega mini-boss, and there is Riders of Deadlands. He's the main boss. Ow! Now you can see Lokai there is tanking him. Either a berserker or a tank can do it. He doesn't hit very hard. And I guess they got the... they're all finished over here. Now, notice that no one's actually hitting Riders of Deadlands. And there's a reason for that. Once you get him down to a certain percentage of his health, he starts, like, piling on his big attacks, which are somewhat nasty. And it's not like that they would wipe your party, it's just that they're annoying to deal with. But what we want to do is we want to wait, because there are still 2 more bosses to come. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. One is Herd Leader something, and another one I think is a bishop or something or other. They'll spawn out of this passage here, and this one over here, after a certain amount of time. Looks like he might be having a little bit of trouble, so I'll take over aggro the boss. This is what the tanks are supposed to do when they're in this dungeon. That should be enough chaining. Maybe a little bit more. I mean, he did have a good amount of aggro. I want to keep him here. I don't want his health to go down any more than this. And we're just going to keep him here until those other 2 bosses spawn. It takes a while. About maybe like a minute or 2, I think. Or maybe even 3. I don't know, I never quite timed it. But it takes a little while. Sometimes it helps to have a priest. That way they can heal you. But if you have enough defense, you know, as you can see here, he's not really hurting me. And I can easily just potion through it. And basically during this time, everyone gets to take a break, relax, jump around, talk, show off your pets, all that fun jazz. Ow! Now here, you see that? You hear a threatening roar in the deep. That means that the other 2 bosses have just spawned. And let me see if I can get... There's Herd Leader Borupu and Bishop Kaisiku, or whatever his name is. Now they're not too hard, they're just mini bosses. And once they're dead, everyone's free to go wild on Riders of Deadlands. Which it looks like they are. Now... I mean, he's not too hard, but this Call of the Earth will make him basically indestructible, as you can see. And then he starts this other thing, Death Sentence, which is like an AoE that will really take your health down. Something to be careful of. He also does Earthquake, so another thing to be careful of there. And use my invincibility skill. And just be nice to get him down before, he does anything else. He never even got a chance to use his Earthquake skill. So obviously having more DPS is really helpful. And then everyone basically just has auto-loot pets, and this goes pretty quickly. It's a real shame that our priest disconnected, though. And yeah, that's basically it. I mean, pretty easy, right? And it's pretty quick. You get really good loot out of here. Alright, Now I can turn in those 2 daily quests.
Yeah? What do you want?
Darkness looming over Hakanis. Get the 10 ancient stone glyphs for my primal skill. And the King Hadakhan's monsters, which will give me a Gretis' token of punishment. That's connected to this Commander of the Undead quest, where if you turn in 30 of those, so basically you run this 30 times, and you get Zelnaris Craft Material Package, which will be really handy for crafting yourself your secondary weapon. Alright, time to see what I got. And it doesn't look like I did very well this time. Just some tempered adamantium alloy, mysterious fragments, bunch of tempering stones, some ancient Terminian alloy, and a few material collection boxes. Nope, nothing too exciting out of this run, unfortunately. You can get really good stuff out of HU. You can get things like Tamajan weapons, Tamajan jewelry, Tamajan armor. You can get heroic Terminian marks and even legendary Terminian marks. I got a Saluna mark out of one of the boxes before. So, I mean, you know, don't take this as what the dungeon has to offer, because, trust me, it has lots of really good stuff to offer. This has been Sorvesteon. I hope you found the guide useful. If you did, don't forget to click a like and to subscribe to my channel for more videos for Riders of Icarus. See you next time, and take care.